Wild blackberry season usually starts around midsummer, and for us it's compulsory to stop and pick a couple of billies full on the way to the bush. You can't beat a good blackberry pie. Oh, what are those little things?
They're just like gherkins, like, use your fingers, you'll be right.
Okay,
No, hold it there. Did you see one?
Mm.
Oh, good on you. Did you get it on film?
Yeah.
Well, it was a bit strange that what happened, and it wasn't far from camp actually.
Oh, good on you.
Up there. We didn't want to shoot it.
Oh, okay. What was
Could have shot it like easy.
Oh, good on you. Yeah, oh, thank goodness I don't have to eat my hat.
Yeah.
Oh,
Spotted it. Clyde went just on ahead of it, but anyway, coming out of the trees there, just up the side, and I look up ahead to see where Clyde is because he was just going to sit by a log, and then just across the creek over there, I see this deer just mooching out of the bush.
okay.
And anyway, it was just feeding its way out in the
Yeah.
toy and stuff.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking to myself, where the heck's Clyde? Because he's only just straight across from it.
Yeah.
And
And Clive had seen it.
no, he didn't know it was there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he's just up there. I sneaked along just sort of in a dip, trying to get closer, finding where Clyde is, because the deer's not that far away. It's just over there. And anyway, there's Clyde sort of standing there, just filming some little caterpillars on a thing. He's standing right in the open, filming these caterpillars on a stalk.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to get a shot of, the close-up of a caterpillar, and then you coming into the shot out of,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
fancy
watching
shot.
Clyde there, and the deer's just across the creek, right just there.
You didn't even
40
see
metres
it.
away. No, didn't know it was there.
Did you pan onto it and get it?
No, Clyde had the camera.
Oh, I know, but
I
did,
was just, oh
did
yeah,
you
what
be-
happened is, so I was sort of creeping up, watching the deer, watching Clyde. And
Yeah.
I was trying to wave out to you, boy.
I know, I saw you,
Oh,
and
you
I'm
did?
indicating I thought you'd seen a deer, but I thought it was a lot further up the ridge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll ignore it, I just want to catch you to come through.
Anyway, I snuck up closer to Clyde, and then I'm going just there, and then he just slowly looks across, and there's the deer just there.
Just standing there. Oh, good on you.
Oh, I was just feeding. It just,
Yeah. It's actually good when you're on the first day to get some
Yeah,
footage,
that's
isn't it?
right. Yeah.
It is,
And I mean, if you'd wanted to, you could have had meat right then, But it's good just to let it go.
During the roar, hinds will often push the yearlings away to look after themselves, while they get wrapped up in the mating ritual. Then later on, after it's all over, they'll usually meet up again and hang around together for some time. It's a great time of year with lots of new growth about, and of course the deer like to make the most of it with an abundance of grass on the clearings. Stags are in velvet, so it's an ideal time to check out an area for trophy potential, or just stag activity in general, so you can assess the likelihood of having some good action during the roar.
Well, what a fantastic little interlude that was. About a 3 or 4 year old stag, I'd say, 6 or 8 points of velvet, just hardening up, getting in preparation for the oncoming roar. I didn't want to risk getting the rifle off my shoulder, loading up and trying to get a shot because he was a bit close, and I thought chances are he'll hear me or see me and buzz off, we wouldn't get anything. So I thought, no, I'll just concentrate on the camera, I've got it in my hand, and it was worth it. And it's not always about shooting the first deer you see anyway. You will notice that as he took off, he barked. Now that indicates there was more than one animal, and at this time of year, during the velvet, the stags often group up, so you could see more than one male at a time. And actually in the footage, you'll notice, if you looked over the stag's backside as he was feeding, there was a little bit of brown beyond him, and that was actually the second animal. A bit hard to see, I don't quite know what it was, but we'll carry on because we've still got to get some meat yet, so hopefully we'll come on to something else.
Back in the 60s and 70s, deer were quite numerous in these parts, but with the intense hunting pressure, both by helicopters and meat hunters like myself and a massive recreational hunting, the numbers have just plummeted. So these days we feel pretty fortunate to actually get something for the table.
Oh,
Wow. These things are getting heavier than they used to be. You might have noticed that I'm struggling a bit with this deer here, which was only about 50 kilos. But when we look back at what we used to carry, sort of like up to twice the weight of this one, 100 kilos, wasn't all that uncommon. And then there's the really big fella, which stands out always. He weighed about 120 kilos. That's if you convert it from what he weighed in pounds. In those days it was weighed in pounds, 262 pounds, plus the offal as well, plus 3 kilos for the frame, plus 3 kilos for the rifle. Pretty heavy weight. And what made it worse, it was mostly uphill. Oh, lovely. We always look for a log for rest. To give you an idea of how much advantage it was, I've literally carried thousands of deer on my back, because it was the only way to get them out. And yet, touch wood and all that, so far I haven't had any back troubles. And that is due to carrying the deer in this bit.
The best way to carry out a deer whole is using some kind of a pack frame such as this. Now, Father made this about 30 years ago, and it's literally carried out tons and tons of venison. The best way to carry out a deer whole is using some kind of a pack frame such as this. Now, Father made this about 30 years ago, and it's literally carried out tons and tons of venison. He had one previous to that, which he thinks was a slightly better design, but unfortunately left it on the side of the road one time after leaving camp, so some lucky person scored that one. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the time in the bush you'll cut a deer up when you get it and you'll carry out the meat, but if you're willing, you know, to carry the whole thing out, this is the way to do it. The deer is simply held on by a couple of wire straps. It sits upside down with the backbone sitting against here, and the rest of the frame is basically, this is all steel. However, it would be a good idea to make one out of aluminium if you could. It would be a little bit lighter. What you do want is good quality, you know, leather or something that's strong as leather for the straps, something that's not going to break because it's got to carry a lot of weight. These are actually just punched with like leather rivets, I suppose. Quite simple really, but it's amazing how well it holds. This here is just a big leather pad that goes against your back, quite comfortable, and then it's just simply strapped around the back. Quite a simple format. These are just the strings used to tie the carcass on. What we've got here is a couple of wires, so they just slide on there depending on the size of the beast you've got. One goes around the brisket, and the other goes around the back legs sort of thing. It's strapped on there, which we'll demonstrate anyway. Now, as far as putting the deer on the frame goes, now I have a specific way around on the frame I like it to sit, because I generally carry the rifle in my right hand. So when I've got the frame over my back, I don't want the neck hanging down this side, so I just always put the neck hanging that side. So in other words, it'll go that way. Now it sits on there nicely. The backbone just sits around that curvature there. This rope here, straight over that bar. Now, the reason for the deer being upside down is, of course, it closes up the chest cavity there, if you like, so that if you've got an offal, if you're selling a deer for instance, you've got the liver, the lungs, kidney, heart, spleen all attached, and it has to stay attached for selling it, so that MAF and so the vets can check the vitals and all that sort of thing. Now, so that way you've also got no blood leaking out that comes down here. Tie that right away. Okay, so that's the back end tied on. Now the front end, the wire goes around in front of the brisket, just around the base of the neck. across here, and you just pull it in as tight as you can. It keeps it quite compact really, and of course with a smaller deer like this, it squashes up quite nicely. But when you've got a big stag, sort of a guy over 100 kilo, the brisket will actually sit right up here, and the frame kind of disappears on the...
Right, we've had them where we can't see the steel frame, haven't we?
Yeah, and you know you've got a big deer. Now of course the good thing about the frame also is that when you're carrying it, you've got your arms free, so you can carry your rifle in one hand, and if you had to carry the head out, you can still, you know, you've got a bit of free arm space. And really, you know, once you get used to it, you've got your own frame. It only takes 5 minutes to tie it on. Now, how it works out is that the back end tends to be a bit heavier than the front end, full of muscle and stuff, so the neck balances it out, and when you've got it on your back, it's amazing how well balanced the weight is. It's very even, and you'll be surprised if you ever try it using a frame method as opposed to the pea-cow method, where you've got the neck sticking way up here. The weight's too high, and you really struggle with your back, especially on seat. Yeah, if you're going, you know, uphill or downhill, it's just too top heavy, and it tends to go like this, off balanced. And this fella here, this sits on your hips, lower down, the weight's down there, it's more on your legs. Doesn't strain your back half as much as the other way. Now believe it or not, that's actually pretty comfortable. It's not so comfortable when you've got a 100 kilo stag on, but that's just a nice weight, that. It's a good size. And it's very, very evenly dispersed, the weight. And the big thing is you've got both hands free, and you know, you can swivel around a lot, and it's all good. Watch out for that steam metal there. Not exactly the nicest bit of country through here. Pretty steep. Huh. Well, look at this. Take a look at that down here on the ground. You see what that is? Oh yeah, it's a skull, and it's old. Look at that, there's the antlers out there.
One of the old man's ones.
Probably, yeah. One probably father shot many years ago. Not, you know, wouldn't have been bad. Sort of, you know, potentially 5 points. Little fellas up here.
Yeah, look at that.
Pretty old, eh?
Look at the skull. Look at this.
Yeah. That'd look quite nice, eh? There's a bit of length of that.
Yeah, for a year
On
ago.
there, you know. Not quite that big, but yeah, it's an oldie. Like that's probably, that could be 30 years old, eh? That fella.
It's freaky to spot that.
Yeah. It's funny because I've come through sort of this area a few times, but haven't actually spotted that lately. Oh, look, there you go. The whole thing's here. I didn't even notice. Fancy that. There's the actual skull. Bits of the skull there. Oh, look how old it is. Look at that. Look at that. Look, there you go. Fancy Nancy. That's really old. Look, you'll notice here, well, they're probably broken there, but what the deer will often do when they find a fresh cast or, you know, a bit of antler line on the ground, they'll actually chew the tips. They'll chew here because they get a bit of calcium or something like that out of it. So it's actually good for them. But where'd that go? Sort of like, how did that work?
Well, you can do what you like with it.
Yeah, twist it in any direction we want. It's kind of weird, eh, the way that's coming in. So, you know, you're sort of talking that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Quite interesting, really.
I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, that'd look...
over 30 years, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's old, really old. And a lot more deer around when this fellow was on the hoof, I tell you that. But that would actually look quite nice coming through, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's got a bit of interest to it.
Yeah.
It's a bit distorted down by the skull there.
Yeah, it's actually somewhere. I don't know, it's meant to be something.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a bit weird. But there you go, yeah.
What do you know?
Okay, it's amazing what you can find. these southland forests, you can still see the remains of the old tram tracks when they did the logging here about 100 years ago. You can see the rails running along here and all the cross bearers here. And of course they were all made of timber, so they're just starting to rot away, and you know, pretty soon you won't see any remains left at all. But what's amazing is just how well it all regenerates. This is all beech forest, and apart from the odd stump you see around with a bit of moss on them, it'd be hard to know that it was ever logged in the first place. It's just great to see how nature repairs itself.
It's now the start of April, so the roar should be in full swing. We're in a part of Southland we've never been before, so it'll be good to check out some new country.
It's a beautiful morning, isn't it? Lovely, it's calm. Dusting of snow on the tops. Day of rain yesterday after lunchtime it came in. Heavy rain. What do you think of that? And we've heard nothing apart from that echo, so maybe that's a bit of hope. Beautiful bird song around here, isn't it? Sun's peeking through. Well, let's go and pick the day up somewhat.
It's certainly a lovely patch of bush through here, nice rolling contours, very easy walking with visibility up to about 70 metres at times. While it makes for very pleasant surroundings, you still need to keep your wits about you, because in country like this an animal can spot you from a fair way off. Fortunately for us, we managed to see this little guy first. During the roar, hinds will often push the yearlings away to look after themselves, while they get wrapped up in the mating ritual. Then later on, after it's all over, they'll usually meet up again and hang around together for some time. This is one of those situations when the camo gear really plays its part. As long as the wind stays right, it's possible to get in quite close. Luckily the breeze direction stayed consistent long enough to snap off a few good shots before a backdraft gave us away.
Look, we don't get to see many little deer or hinds in the roar usually, because we're roaring stags and trying to get the action, and the males are coming in and whatever. So to see a little yearling like that just feeding quietly is marvellous. They just make that forest, the whole forest just come alive when you get a few animals. It doesn't have to be many, just the odd one dotted around. It just makes the forest that much more pleasant. Anyway, we'll keep pressing on and see how we get on this afternoon.
I have to say, Clyde and I were rather enjoying mooching through so much relatively flat country. We're mostly used to a bit steeper undulating contours, so it makes a pleasant change. About an hour after the last episode, we spotted a deer up ahead lying down in the moss. It makes a really nice setting with the contrast of the brown against the vibrant green. And it's easy to see why it's bedded down in this stuff. So soft and spongy, it's really comfortable. Clyde managed to sneak up a bit closer and get a few more pics before they departed. It turned out to be a hind and yearling, which is great to see, but we were starting to wonder where the stags are. So far all we'd heard all morning was a couple of distant roars, and that was about it. So after about another half hour, it was a great relief when a nice throaty roar broke the silence. He was only a couple of 100 metres ahead, and was actually responding to another stag away in the distance.
Just heard a stag. There's a wallow there. And he's answering a stag that's roaring somewhere back in here. We want to sneak up and get a look, so I'll just whack this gear on.
Now you're probably thinking we're making an awful lot of noise going through that crown fern, and you'd be right, but we tend to not worry too much about noise until we get close, because as long as we're roaring, he'll just assume it's the other stag coming through.
This crown fern. Place is always coming undone.
Unfortunately, he's spotted something he doesn't like the look of. We'll assume that's Clyde. And once they've got suspicion in their head, it's very difficult to change their mind.
You can see him, but he's just a piddly little 6 or 8 or something, just a little guy. A lot of noise. I think he's got a hind or something with him there. By crikey, this thing gets heavy. Whoa, man. It's just, you know, heavy. He's looking right at us through there. So you can't really move. It's slowly. The wind held off. The wind's always the biggest nightmare.
Barking now.
Barking there. Red deer bark. Both hinds and stags will bark. It's an alert call they make. But anyway, we had a little bit of action, didn't we? We're well. I think that's the hind actually, because I can hear some more rustling. The stag's still hanging around, I think. We'll just cut back across and then hit another main ridge and try and get out.